Amen. So at the end of the last class, kind of interrupted Brother Rogers a bit. So I want to get him to pick up the story that he was speaking about. And he took us to the line of Moses.
So as I was saying, if you look at that line, it will help us to understand when we come to rewrite history, whose fault was it that they made the mistake? Was it God's or their fault? So we see Moses raised up to do our work, but he doesn't have a complete understanding of the work that he's supposed to do, on how he's supposed to accomplish it. We see him killing an Egyptian, witnesses states that God takes him to the wilderness for 40 years to do a re-education to him. When he comes out of that place now, he has a correct understanding of his work. So in this line of Moses, you can see two portions to the work that he's supposed to do. The first part, when he doesn't have a full understanding of what he's supposed to do. The second part, when now God has re-educated him, and he has a full import of what he's supposed to do. When you come to the line of Christ, I want to take Christ and the disciples. The disciples are with Christ, but they have a misunderstanding of the kind of kingdom he's to set up. For 3 years, he's trying very hard to educate them, but based on how they were brought up from the Jewish church, they really don't fully understand the kind of kingdom he's supposed to set up for the 3.5 years they are with him. So until we come to the cross of disappointment is going to take them through an education process. And now in the second part of it, they have an understanding of what Christ's mission and purpose and role was in these 3.5 years. So you can see that in the first portion, they do not have an understanding, but in the second, through some event, God is going to educate them on his mission when he came to earth. So taking these two lines, they will help explain the history that we have to see this pattern where in the first bit of their history, they don't fully understand what their mission and role is. But God is going to bring an event that will intervene, that will take them through a re-education process, and that event will mark us the spring disappointment, that helps them now have a comprehension of what the message that they're supposed to give concerning the calculation of the prophetic periods. So based on those 3 lines, then based on what you explained, I'm willing now to see that when you come to the time of the end, when that message is opened up, let's at the increase of knowledge. Because of this long period of darkness, it's impossible that God brings them and opens everything at once to them. Yes, to systematically take them through the education process. So then I'm beginning to see that partly it's not possible for them to comprehend everything at that increase of knowledge.
So, even though I asked the question just from that basic Spirit Prophecy quote about apportioning blame to people, whether it's God or the Millerites, I want us to see that this combination of the human and the divine is not as straightforward as we might make it appear. I want to read something. This is from Froome's work. So the coding is PFF4. Prophetic Faith of Our Fathers, Volume 4. PFF4, beginning page 461. Brother Roger still hasn't told us what a hand is yet, because we need to deal with that. PFF 461. Hopefully we're all there. Paragraph 3. For 2 years, from 16 to 18, the Bible became Miller's constant study and meditation. He felt that God was a being that he could trust. But how could he know God except through the Bible? To find him and his will and plan for man thenceforth became the supreme passion of his life. The Bible became his delight, a solid rock in the midst of the swirling stream of life. His unbelieving friends taunted him with being blind in his faith, just as he had done with others in the day of his own deism. He had enjoyed propounding perplexing questions to Christians and triumphing over their discomfiture. Now he must receive the same and meet the issue. "Give me time," he calmly answered, "and I will harmonize these apparent contradictions." So it was this challenge of the deists that drove him to intensive study of the Bible, together with his own strong determination to know for himself. There's a couple of interesting things that we can pick up from there. Whatever his crime was, just like Jacob, it's going to be now poured back upon him. Jacob the supplanter gets supplanted. William Miller, the mocker, is going to be mocked. The ridiculer is going to be ridiculed. The questioner is going to be questioned. But what I wanted us to see, it says, but how could he know God except through the Bible? To find him and his will and plan for man thenceforth became the supreme passion of his life. So when we start talking about humanity and divinity, I'm not arguing he doesn't have a personal walk or communication with God, but how does this humanity and divinity work? It's not some spiritual experience like God gave, and I'm not saying anybody said anything wrong, but I want to say it this way. When we say God raised up a man like snow and God gave him a message like snow, we want to see actually how it works in real life. Because if God raises a man and gives him a message, that's humanity and divinity. But he's saying it this way: how could he know God except through the Bible? The only way you're going to know God is through the Bible. So we can take this idea that he receives a message, the angels speak to him, etc. I'm not shying away from that, but what does it look like in real life? It's a human being wrestling with the Bible in the same way anyone else does. To find him and his will and plan for man thenceforth became his supreme passion, the supreme passion of his life. The Bible became his delight, a solid rock in the midst of the swirling stream of life. People are going to start asking him questions, and what's his response? Give me time. Why can't he just come up with the answer straight away? When someone says there's a Bible verse, answer it. You know, like people expect me or you to do a Q&A. They say, what does this verse mean? And they expect you to know the answer. So he says, give me time. What's that telling us? Sorry?
You have to go and search.
Yeah, there must be an increase of knowledge. He doesn't know everything. He says, but I have confidence that I can find the answers, that they're there. I just need to find out those answers. So there's a combination of the human and divine. What's his confidence in? In divinity, in the Bible. He says divinity has all the answers. But me as a human being, what's the problem? I need time. I need to grow in my education to understand what divinity teaches. So when divinity and humanity combine and we say, you eat the little book, like he's doing, it's not something that as soon as you eat, you have this fantastic knowledge. It's the other way round, that when you eat piecemeal, bit by bit. It's not a sudden thing. He lays aside, next paragraph, all commentaries and preconceived opinion. He took his $18 Bible and his $18 Cruden's Concordance, and with the marginal notes of the Bible and his well-worn histories, He devoted 2 entire years of intensive study to its sacred pages. So he does 3 things. He takes his library, which is history books, he takes Cruden's Concordance, and he takes his Bible. Next paragraph. Section 4, conclusions reached as a result of his study. The prophecies especially fascinated him and convinced him of the inspired origin of the Bible. Though expressed in figurative language, they were obviously fulfilled literally and historically, and he reasoned that these past fulfillments were the assurance and guarantee of the integrity of the portions obviously yet future. He became sure that the historic First Advent was soon to be matched by the glorious Second Advent of the Lord. Here, in his own statement of the conclusion he reached. So now we're going to quote, finding all the signs of the times and the present condition of the world to compare harmoniously with the prophetic descriptions of the last days, I was compelled to believe that this world had about reached the limits of the period allotted for its continuance. As I regarded the evidence, I could arrive at no other conclusion. Finally, in 1818, at the close of these 2 years of intensive studies, he came to the belief that there were a dozen points on which he was compelled to differ radically with the popular views of the day. So she's going to list, Froome's going to list out these 18 points. The temporal millennium is wrong. The return of the Jews, or the Jews being God's people, is wrong. Jesus will come back personally, correct. The kingdom of heaven will be established at his second coming, correct. The earth will perish in a deluge of fire, not water, correct. The new earth will spring out of its ashes, correct. That the righteous dead will be resurrected at the Advent, that the wicked dead will not come forth until after the millennium, that the papal little horn will be destroyed at the Advent, that we are living in the last phase of the outline of prophecy such as Daniel 2. We're living in the period of the toes and the feet. That all the prophetic periods, such as 70 weeks, 1260, and the rest, are to be computed on the day-year principle. 2300 days extended from 457 to about 1843 will bring the climax of prophecy and of human history, and that Jesus will come on or before the Jewish year 1843. His major conclusions, as stated in his own words, was this: I was thus brought in 1818 at the close of 2 years' study to the solemn conclusion that in about 25 years from that time, 1818, all the affairs of our present state would be wound up. So, the next portion is interesting. So startling were these conclusions of 1818 that Miller felt he must be wrong. No one agreed with him as far as he was aware. He was so startled by his findings that he determined to review, to restudy, and challenge each step, weighing every objection such as, no man knows the day or the hour. This was consistent with his poise and methodical makeup. Thus it was that for 4 years more, from 18 to 22, were spent in further laborious intensive study, a total of 6 years of specialized study such as few men ever put into the sheer study of the Bible. Then on September 22nd, 1822, in the prime, at the age of 40, having finished his review of the conclusions reached in 1818, and now persuaded that they were sound and true, he wrote his credo, or compendium of faith, and that's what he lists out if you go further down. So if we go back to 463 paragraph 14, what you'll notice in point 12 and then the summary of all of that, he says on or before the Jewish year of 1843. Why does he say that? he says on or before, and then before that he says about. So he says three vague words: about, on or before, and then in the quote that's at the very end of the paragraph, it says in about 25 years. So what is he doing here with his mathematics? Sorry?
Yes, not reached to conclusion of definite time.
So my brother says he didn't reach definite time. Do we agree with that? Did he reach definite time when he says about, on or before, in about 25 years? What do we understand definite time to be?
Like, if he is using the word on, he could be telling a great time, but he's not very sure. Is it going to be before or exactly that time or around that time?
So, my question is, what's your definition of definite time?
It's the exact time.
So, if we say definite time, it has to be the exact time. Everybody agree with that? Everybody except one person? Is it Brother William, you agree with that? What's definite time mean?
Coming at a specific time.
So when he says about, before, maybe, that's not definite time? No.
It's not very definite.
It's not very definite. Okay, my brother?
Okay. Definite time is when you identify a particular year or month when something happened. And I'm seeing what he has when he says about before, he's identifying specific years when these things happen. So I'm saying definite time.
This is definite time.
He's identifying a specific year when this will take place.
If I said in about 25 years, it could be 42, 43, 44. Could be before 43. In about. Is that your definition of definite time?
If you're in 1818, you say in about 25, how can it be 42?
How can it be 42?
You're in 1818.
Because it's about 25. Could be 44, could be 42, could be 43. In the one before it says on or before 43. That's where I got the 42 from.
Yeah, but I see my identifying a specific year when something is going to happen, whether 42 or 43 is identifying a year.
Okay, so the fact that he's saying about, he's not definitely saying it's definitely that year, is that still definite time?
Yes.
Sister Emma? The same question I asked before, and everyone was saying yes, and you were saying no. No, they were saying no, you were saying yes.
I don't know why you're saying on before. Is this because he's nervous about day and hour?
I don't know. I'm asking you, is that definite time?
I think when you give a year, it's a definite time. But obviously you said on before, so maybe you could argue it's not definite.
Yeah, no, I don't want you to argue against yourself. I'm asking your opinion.
But I think it's...
You look like you were disagreeing with everyone.
Yeah, I think it's definite. I was thinking it's pretty easy.
It's definite because he's given a year. But he's given 3 years, or 2 years at least. So that's still definite for you.
Okay, because he's in the cloud. It's more definite later.
My brother.
Actually, me, I think it's definite because it's giving the end point.
He's giving you
The end point.
the end point.
Yeah, saying even if he's not sure when, but he says it can't cross this limit. So time is definitely important.
Okay?
What is that?
Can't be past 43.
Yeah.
But if I said about 43,
Yes.
why can't it be past? Brother William.
For me, I still think that, like, what Miller is identifying when he says about is not definite enough. What he's identifying is time, but not definite time. So he's identifying that aspect of time, but that time is not definite. So for me, I could rather say he identifies time, but not definite. Because if you say about that can be
I want us to explore what we understand definite time to be. I haven't researched it. Maybe we should research it. I don't want to do research in class. But I want us to understand what definite time is in the way it's being used. The reason why I want to do that, it says, going back to the beginning, I was compelled to believe that this world had reached the limits of the period allotted to its continuance, or the limits of the time allotted to its continuance. As I regarded the evidence, I could arrive at no other conclusion. Finally, in 1818, at the close of 2 years of study, he came to believe that there were a dozen points on which he was compelled to differ radically from the popular views of the day. He was persuaded that the popular view of the temporal millennium before the second advent and the end of the age was a fallacy. What's that saying? The popular view. No man.
When I look at this popular view of the temporal millennium, is where people believe Christ is coming, but we don't know when. So no man knows the day nor the hour. My point why I said that what William Miller is identifying is definite time is because when you began reading, one of the verses he has to go to is the book of Matthew. No man knows the day nor the hour. To know how he's going to deal with that as he presents this message. So I wonder why he's going to that verse if he's not predicting definite time.
I want to suggest that the definition of definite time is not a hard date, like it's certainly 43, or it's certainly 42, or it's October, or it's even the season. I want to suggest that this concept of definite time is a direct attack on point one. Point one says we don't know any time, and he says we know time. The subject of time is now a component of Bible study. And it's the argument that no man knoweth the day or the hour or time. And he says, we do know time. We can look around and we can see we're at the end of the world. All the signs are pointing to that, which is part of the logic that he's using here. And he says, we can now know time. And the fact that he says approximately or about, because of his fear, or maybe he's not so sure about the date, 457. Maybe he doesn't even know if that date's correct. Because where did he even get that date from? It's not in the Bible, and it's not in Cruden's Concordance. It's here from his history books. And he knows the history books are not inspired. So how could you know that your start date is correct? Because we approach it from a different perspective. We said angels gave him the date. How do angels give you the date? They didn't have a dream or a vision. He reads books, and you've got 4 historians giving you 4 dates, perhaps. I don't know what number he has. He has to pick one of them. How do you know if he's picked the right one? He doesn't know. This is real humans dealing with real divinity. He's not got dreams and visions. If he doesn't have dreams and vision, he has to take his best guess and he say, I'll go with this chronologist, 457, but he doesn't know it's correct. So when he comes to his conclusions, then he has to say about, on, or before. Maybe all the chronologists were saying 459, 458, or 457. And 457 is the earliest one that he got. He never found a 456. He only found ones that were before that. So if it was a 458, he would say before 1843, because it would be 1 year before. But he never found one that was afterwards. I don't know all of that, but we have to be careful what conclusions we're drawing when we say this man is weak and faithless, that he doesn't want to give a hard date. Because how can he give a hard date based upon non-inspired statements? He's probably being true to the facts. Remember, we read this man has done study for 6 years like no other, I shouldn't quite say it this way, like no other human has done. And this is Froome saying that. I think that was Froome doing that. It was Froome's original language. It's not even an inspired statement. So I don't think he can do anything but say it's about this time, depending on what you're going to go with the start date, because no one knows. No one can be sure that it is actually 457, because it's not that straightforward to work out. So this issue of definite time, I don't think is about having a firm date and having these abouts or perhaps or befores in it. It's more about the ability to predict. Sister Emma?
Yeah, I was going to say that because I just looked at the definition of definite. It says having certain limits, and he's putting limits on it. However broad that limit is, he's putting a limit on it from that first paragraph, the one you read. I was compelled to believe that this God had about reached the limits of the period allotted for its continuance. So that's within the definition of definite.
So he's looking at the world in 1818, and he says it looks bad. So I'm pretty sure that it can't get much worse than this, which is this 25-year. That's not where he's getting the 25 years anyway. He's just saying the world looks bad. But I think when it says definite, when it says within limit, the way I understand that is the word definite is definite. It's pinpoint accuracy. It's saying if you say it has to be this and not this, it's as it reads the word definite. I'm not trying to make a looser definition of definite, but if the year was 458, it has to be 1842. If it's 458, it has to be 1842. Is that right? I'm doing my maths right? If it's 457, it has to be 1843. He doesn't know the date. He's got various chronologists, I guess, who are giving him these differing dates. It's not that easy to work out. Plus, he's working in Gregorian time. He's got to deal with Babylonian time or Persian time. Maybe the years start and end in different history. They're out of phase with our one. We know that. So it's not that straightforward to work out all the details. So he's saying it's definitely going to be this according to my start date at 457. But I don't know if 457 is the right date. So I want us to think about definite time, not in the sense that he doesn't have a fixed date and he's faithless because he's not prepared to make a statement.
So, what is indefinite time then?
Indefinite time.
Yeah, because for me I'm thinking like, if Miller had said that it won't be the year 1843, let's say for example, it won't be 1843, without specifying the marks that now can qualify to me to be definite. He's saying 1843, so you know between January 1853 to the fall of 1843, Christ is going to come. But now it's very indefinite because he says about. So for me that is indefinite because that gives me to a positive or negative. It may go before 1843 or after.
Sister Joy?
I think the issue of being definite or indefinite will be relative. Because in comparison to what the people at that time believed, this will be definite time. But when you have someone later coming up with a specific date, then I think this will now become indefinite. So I think it's relative, depending on what we're looking at.
My brother?
I will think there will be decrease to the definite time, because if we consider the root one, I will suggest that definite time comes from the word defined time. And if something is defined, it has to be set within certain barriers. So it can be defined in that the definition period is big or small, so it depends on the context.
You said definite time. The word definite comes from defined, and defined has limits or boundaries. Okay, so let's work with that. What boundaries do we have? This way the calculation is being done, you need to have how many components to actually get your answer? 2 components. One of them is what?
Suggest the start.
To start, and the other one is? Sorry? The end is the answer. The duration. So we've got this, and that's where we're going. So you said definite time is come from defined, and defined has some boundaries or limits. So let's go with the duration. What's the boundaries of the duration? Goes from when to when? The duration. What number is the duration? What's the boundary for that? You're not understanding my question. What's the boundary of that number? Sister Emma? You don't understand? 2,300 days. How much can you grow that? The boundary of that. How much can you grow 2,300? You can't. How much can you shrink it? So the boundary is that it's the fixed number. So I would do plus or minus 0. So it meets all the definition of definite is defined. It has a boundary. The boundary is plus or minus 0. Okay, so that's that one. The other one is what? The start date. So this is 4:57. What's the definition of that? Definite time, defined time. Is that what you defined? What's the boundaries for that? So I'm going to say plus or minus. Say if we said 1 year. The way he's written it, I'm going to say it's not plus or minus, it's minus 2 years. So when you say minus 2 years, it could be 457, 458, or 459. This is definite. It meets all the requirements of definite time. You just don't know when it starts. So it has, to me, just with the definition, contextually, it has all the characteristics that what he's doing is definite time. This is defined. It's a hard number, so there's no variation in it. This one isn't. You can't go to the Bible and it says it happened in 457. It doesn't say in the 6th year of the king, and the 6th year of the king is this. It tells us the year. Is it? What year is this? About the king. So we've got the 7th year of the king. So if I asked you, when is the 7th year of the king? You don't know when it is. Someone has to do some guesswork, some detective work, some calculation. And you don't know when that's going to be. So why would he say before? Because he doesn't have, I'm suggesting, 3 people all saying the same thing. So he says, upon testimony of 3, it's a firm thing. He might have different dates. So he's forced to be honest and factual about it's 457 minus 2, maybe minus 1. I don't know, because he doesn't give us the information. I think this is exactly what definite time is, if we're okay with that. It's not indefinite, it's definite. It meets the grammatical and the mathematical definition of how we would approach this problem. If we accept that, and maybe you don't accept it yet, but let me ask you a second question. What's the problem here? Is that the problem? No problem, because it is no variation. That's the problem, isn't it? So what don't we have? We don't have enough knowledge or information about this. So what do we need? An increase of knowledge. So we need an increase of knowledge. So does William Miller say, I'm not going to do anything until I get an increase of knowledge? Or do I say something, believe something, trust something with all the information that I have? What does he do? Second one, what should he have done? The second one, because that's how we create our reform line. The book of Daniel is unsealed when he's 16 years old, already and waiting for him to begin to understand Daniel 8:14. So he's going to start to investigate Daniel 8:14 step by step. How many times, you do this with lots of people, how many times you ask me and I say, well, I'm not sure, you'll say, well, just tell me what you know so far. And I'm saying, no, if I do that, it's dangerous. You say, no, just tell us, because it's good, at least we'll know a little bit. And I say, what if I'm wrong? You say, it doesn't matter, just tell us what you think. We do this, it's the exact same characteristics, because we all believe in increasing knowledge. Because if you don't get this and state it, what happens? You can't build upon it. We have to be able to build upon truth, and we do that by stating things at our current understanding, and then we build upon them. All life works that way. Are we okay that this is definite time?
Yes.
Have we been persuaded yet, Brother William?
It makes sense.
Yeah? All that we need is more accurate information. Now, the problem is that from what I see, he starts saying, okay, that's all good, approximately. Then they start doing this chart. And what goes wrong now?
Telling them, remove the ifs and maybe, now go on a hard date.
So they remove all of this. On what basis do they remove it? On what basis are they removing all of this information? I'll ask it the same question a different way. On what basis was all this created? Sorry? Doubts on what?
Fear. It was not shown the year.
Fear. Someone said fear? What's William Miller afraid about? What's he scared about?
Has to be accountable.
No, he's not scared about anything. His problem is he doesn't know the date. He doesn't have information. If he could go to the Bible and the Bible says 457 is the 7th year of Artaxerxes, he would have just said what?
Definitely.
It's definite, 1843. The calculation works. It's all good. So when he does that about, and then they do this, how do they get from about to that? What changed?
They have got an increase of knowledge now, they are sure it is 457.
Okay, my question is, are they sure that it's 457? Are they 100% certain that it's 457? How could they ever be 100% certain that it's 457? How could they ever know it's 457?
Increase of knowledge.
So either they're going to do some more research, or maybe there's another option. Maybe they don't do any more research. Maybe they do what we do, is they just remember one date, 457. Let's remember 457. And when they remember 457, then they say, oh, therefore it must be 1843. Or is there another solution? My brother says an increase of knowledge. How else are we going to do that? Increase of knowledge. What increase of knowledge do we have? How are we going to confirm 1843?
On empower the year-day principle and
Okay. Sorry?
It's got 2 or 3 testimonies.
2 or 3 testimonies. I was just going to say, let's use the principle of triangulation. If you get a triangle, this is one of the most stable structures that you can have. If you have a square, is a square stable? Yes or no? No. Because if you put pressure on it, what can happen? It will collapse. A triangle can never collapse when you triangulate. So, he's going to triangulate, and how does he triangulate? Sorry?
With the other time.
So he has 3 time prophecies with start date 677, 457, and 508. Which is the one that is the one that's going to fix this? Let me do it this way to make sort of the graphics work. You apply pressure here. This one is the load bearer. Which one would that be? The one that guarantees that you're correct.
508.
Sorry? 508. Why does 508 guarantee? Why does 508 guarantee that you're correct?
I can say, I think Miller understood about the date, so he had a clear understanding about 508.
Brother Wilson? Why is 508 the one that can take all the pressure?
I would suggest because it's in the modern era and we have enough historical information pinning down 508 and there was enough historical evidence that would suggest pinning 508 and the events that transpired in 508.
Mr. Emma?
Because there's 2 prophecies that start with that date. You've got 1335 and 1290 on into 1798.
Okay, so it's a much more modern date, but it's still over 1,000 years away, and a connected question to this history. When we talk about the taking away of the daily, we're going to make that what? What is the taking away of the daily? Paganism, historically. The Visigoths. Some people suggest that it's also the 10th and last king who comes over onto the side of the papacy. Who would that be? Sorry? King Arthur. And King Arthur is a mystical character. No hard evidence of that. So even though we've got sort of some history here, even the history is a little bit shaky about exactly what goes on and what doesn't. The history of the Visigoths is pretty accurate though, but the history of King Arthur isn't. But if we're going to use a more definite one, the reason why 508 is so rock solid is because you don't just have one prophecy here. We go for 1335, but 1335 in and of itself is a prophecy of three, or a date that connects three prophecies together. Three prophecies are 1335, 1260, 1290. And it's the relationship of the 1290 and the 1260 that enables you to come to 508, depending on how you read the verses. So without going into mathematics of that, is everybody okay with that understanding? Yeah? 508 is fixed. You can fix it from the history, but not just with the history. The mathematics of the prophecy will give you that. So when we come to definite time, it fulfills all the characteristics of definite time. Because 508 is well over 1,000 years. What's the most current date that you have, which is easily verifiable? The date. Not 508. It's 1798. 1798 is modern history. This is 20 years. This is like the newspapers. Everyone knows what 1798 is. It's the end of the 1260. It's the end of the 1290. Therefore, you've got the 30 years. Therefore, you can go 538, take away 30 is 508, beginning the 1335 prophecy. It's 1798 that is really the fixed point. Are we okay with that logic? We can explain that? So 508 is firm. 508 is going to take you to where? $508 plus or minus 0. 1335. Therefore 1843. Fixed plus or minus 0. This is not the definition of definite time because it's better than definite time before, but it's triangulating things. It's using testimony of 2 or 3. It becomes established. 677 comes from where? It's chronologist or a Jewish tradition. They say this is the 20th year of Manasseh. I think it's the 20th year of Manasseh. 20th year of Manasseh is okay, but what is the 20th year of Manasseh? What's his first year? You still have to lock in some kind of chronologist to do that. So it's 508 that's really going to lock this in. And so when they produce this chart and they triangulate, because you've got 677, 457 and 508 here, all bringing you to 43, 43, 43. When you do that, now it's fixed. He's used another logic to with the 677. We did that before, the 2520. That's what this 45 years is here, if you like. The 1798, 45 years. It's the last part of paganism. It's not a true second witness, but it's an additional piece of logic that they're going to use. They get the two 1260s, cut one of them, and tag it onto the end. So it gets all the numbers to work, but it's 508 that really is a fixed number. We now know the problem with all of this is 508, 1335 is not the same prophecy as the 2520 or the 2200 days. He makes them the same, but they're not. We okay with that? That's where his mistake is. Questions? Okay, so what I want to...
So from where we did, we saw that from 1816 to 1818, Miller comes into a conclusion that Christ is going to come in about 25 years, all before the Jewish year 1843. But that paragraph told us that because at that time his views couldn't be accepted, he again went back to review the material that he had started for more 4 years. I'm not trying to go out with the increase of knowledge and believe that in a reform we have an increase of knowledge. But when he reviews his material from 1818 to 1822, again he arrives at the same conclusion. What is that telling us? There was no increase of knowledge, or what is happening? Because he's going back for 4 years and then he arrives at the same thing he had arrived. We don't see any other change.
I agree with that. That's why we make 1818 when we think about a waymark, that this is the waymark that defines the increase of knowledge. Because when he goes 25 years, he's already making the prediction in 25 years. You can argue that 25 years is a binding off or a conclusion of a matter. So there the message ends. There's no new information. I agree with that idea. We just do increase of knowledge and sort of keep on making it go on and on. Because the increase of knowledge, where would you end it really? Because kind of we often just do this and kind of leave it there.
But it extends.
It goes all the way to the end. Yeah. Remember we said about darkness, we put darkness here, and the period of darkness comes to an end. It doesn't come to an end. The whole reform line is a period of darkness with increasing light coming to individuals. Many people remain in darkness. So it's darkness there, plus light, it's this tension. The increase of knowledge doesn't end here at the formalization or the empowerment. It goes all the way to the end. It never stops. But we mark a hard date, 1818, because when you go from 1818, as you've identified, for the next 4 years, there's no increase of knowledge. It's fixed. But we take the increase of knowledge as sort of a general idea about the whole history. Sister Emma?
So I just wanted to clarify, we mark the chart producing as when he starts to definitely say it's 1823. Do you know when he starts to definitely say without a shadow of a doubt? It's kind of like he's got all that information, he's got all this information about his properties, so he knows all those things. So, but when he starts definitely saying it's definitely, because we mark it in our history that when he produces that chart.
My argument, he never does. I don't think as a human being he ever does that. He always wants to be cautious or vague. It's the other people that take his material and do that. Maybe he's willing to accept that there may be a mistake somewhere. It all looks right, but I don't want to be so dogmatic. And it's the chart that becomes a dogmatic issue. And it's people taking his material and doing stuff with it. He never produced the chart.
Behind the chart, there's so many people that accepted that he was confident, or was he just did everything?
I don't know to make a firm position on was he behind it. I think he was behind it. But he's always expressing this concern that let's not be too hasty, and then when snow comes or the disappointment happens, he says, see, I knew it, shouldn't have been so hard, because he still has confidence. He says maybe it's next year or maybe it's in a few months, let's not be firm or fixed about the date. I don't think he was ever took that position. He gets railroaded into this issue.
So we are saying that when he had these phrases about or before, from the quotation that we have read, had he by that time understood the 548 and the 677 year?
So this is an interesting point, that when does he understand about 508? What time period does he understand that in? And from my understanding, he knows about it in 1818. He already knows about that. He didn't sort of say, oh, well, I've only got 457, which is the logic that I was presenting. He has 508 there, and he still has this caution. So let's just summarize. Definite time I'm saying is an argument against the millennial doctrine, which is indefinite time. Definite time doesn't mean you have to know the exact day. It doesn't mean you can't say about or approximately. Definite time is now taking prophecies, having start dates, projecting them, and coming to a conclusion to say that the end of the world, the second coming, can now be predicted using time calculations, not in the way that it's all hidden or secret. That to me is the definition of definite time. And what we're seeing as we go through this history is an increase of knowledge. It's an increase of knowledge over the whole history. We see these misconceptions at the beginning and that they get clarified at a later date. I don't believe this is an issue that God is deliberately hiding, that they can't see. It's not deliberate laziness on the part of human beings. It's a function of our inability as human beings to gather an enormous amount of information at one point, make sure that it's all correct and say, this is error-free. If we were to do that, we would never make a statement until the very end. Just like the concept of baptism. When do you get baptized? At the beginning or the end of your journey? At the beginning. How much do you really know and understand about the sinfulness of sin? But you don't know much. I mean, you know, thou shalt not steal, but most people don't have a full concept of what stealing is. And even after 5-10 years as an Adventist, you still don't know what stealing really is. We won't perhaps know until we get to heaven and then through eternity what stealing is. How Christ's life got stolen from him, got taken from him. His divinity and what it was, how he was from the very beginning of eternity, how it changed, that he now had to take bodily form. All that got stolen from him, if you want to see the full depths of stealing, perhaps. I'm not trying to make a doctrine out of it, but I'm saying that you have to make some kind of position without a full understanding of things. We all accept that, we all live that way, and that's what these reform lines teach us. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we give you praise and thanks for your goodness. Help us, Lord, as we continue to have an increase of knowledge, not only in your prophetic word, but in who we are as your children. As this increase of knowledge impacts our minds, may it also impact our hearts, so that we might have a corresponding religious experience that is in conformity to your word. Lord, as we come to the few remaining days of this school, help us to continue to press together, to be loving and kind to one another, and to continue to honour you. We ask for a special blessing upon the food that we're to eat, and carry us through this day. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.